Great. Well, welcome everyone. I am Lynn Casto, head of school at Maumee Valley, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all. I see many familiar faces and also some I've not had the pleasure of meeting yet due to COVID and other travel restrictions. But I want to first start off by thanking our Alumni Council for putting together these virtual soapboxes. This is an incredible way to bring community together in a socially distant and COVID safe world. I also want to thank Tyler Boehm in particular for putting together tonight's film and entertainment edition of our Alumni Council Soapbox Series. We kicked this off first with a DEI edition where we had alumni speaking about their experiences at Maumee Valley. And I'm very excited to hear this evening from those who are working in film and entertainment and hope that we can make connections across time periods as we have current students, graduates, and alumni here together in one space. Thank you, Tyler. I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. And thank you everyone for coming. I think we have a really great lineup of panelists here tonight. And it's really exciting to me that we represent a diverse array of careers in Hollywood. So I'm excited for all our panelists to share their experiences. But first, I just want to talk about a couple of quick ground rules. So we're going to start with everyone introducing themselves. And then I really hope that the conversation, that the panel becomes a conversation and that we have plenty of time to ask questions. But to keep things orderly, we ask that you either raise your hand virtually or put a question in the chat, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can. And I also want to say that we're really hoping that this panel leads to ongoing relationships. So if something strikes your interest tonight, if you want to continue the conversation with any of us here, please reach out to Wheezy or me, and we would love to help make that happen. So I'll just say that I was part of the first Sundance Winter in 1998. A group of us went out with Ms. Barthold and Ms. Kelch and Mr. Hayes and went out to Park City. And that trip turned me on to film. I came home and I started ravenously watching movies, which I had to rent from a video rental store. I don't know if anybody remembers that. But a few years later, I was in film school. And a few years after that, I was in LA working in the film business. And I just think Maumee Valley provided a spark that led me directly to my career. And I suspect that we're going to hear some more stories like that tonight. So I'm so excited to welcome our panelists. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Stephen, do you want to kick us off and maybe tell us when you graduated, what you do now, and maybe take us quickly through like what a day in your job is like?
So do I have the honor of being the senior citizen here? I think I probably do. Wow, this is humbling. So I'm class of 1970. So if anyone wants to challenge that, go ahead. I currently am the managing director of Masterpiece on PBS, the British drama series you all know and love. And obviously graduated from Maumee Valley, which was my last graduating achievement, actually, because I went to college for a couple of years at Ithaca College, majoring in what I thought was going to be my life in television, and I ended up hating it. It's kind of complicated to explain, and I won't waste your time now, but I eventually switched over to art and art history, and that became my focus. Finally moved back to Toledo after college, and went to the Toledo Museum, which you all know and love, I'm sure, and somehow got into photography. That led me to a job at the then public TV station WGTE, which is really all I ever wanted to do, was just be a photographer. And so there I was as a photographer, a staff photographer at this local PBS station. And within about 3 or 4 months, they said, we need a cinematographer to do a shoot. Well, I'd never shot film before in my life, but I knew something about f-stops and light meters. And there I was in charge of cinematography for WGTE. Such was the plight of public television in the 70s, I have to say. It's all very scrappy and earnest and really fun. Your learning curve was just astronomically steep. And I had a ball. And from then it went from cinematographer to director to studio production to lighting to promotion to eventually I landed in the programming department at WGTE, and that's when I realized that this was a fun big deal. This was programming. This was Cosmos. This was all of this amazing television coming out in the late 70s and early 80s. I loved it. I couldn't get enough. So long story short, that eventually led me to being interested in a job at PBS in Washington. And I went there and pursued that for 10 or 12 years and loved every second of that, meeting all of the producers, executive producers of these national series. And then finally ended up with this gig at Masterpiece, what you might know as Masterpiece Theater, 25 years ago. And I've been there ever since. I will retire from there, I'm sure. And it's been an amazing journey. You're perfectly well intentioned to ask me how the hell I got into all this, but that is the short form narrative of how I got where I am. I'm happy to take any questions about it, but to me, I was looking at the kind of format of the question. I didn't feel as though I broke into this business. I kind of sashayed into it. I was there in Toledo. Toledo was very much my family, my hometown, and everything there was quite wonderful and quite natural. So I can't really relate kind of a hard luck story of how I broke into the business. It all just seemed like one foot in front of the other. So. And it's great to see you guys. I mean, I have to say, this is quite a heartwarming experience. Lynn, I'm sorry we've never met. Maybe someday that'll happen. But some of you will know that my family has very, very deep roots and connections to Maumee Valley, and I'm one of those roots. I was thinking the other day that all of my grandparents, I think, trafficked through Maumee Valley in one way or the other. So I've got more than a few special connections to MV. So it's great to see you guys.
Thank you so much. Kelvin, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. What's the question? You know, my story is, I don't know, I think it's pretty straightforward. I've had a real passion for feature films since I was a small child. You know, as an interesting anecdote, when I was about 13, I started reading Cinefex magazine, which is a magazine dedicated towards visual effects and special effects in feature film. I'm currently and have been working as a visual effects supervisor on some pretty big Hollywood blockbusters for quite some time now. And you know, that magazine was very integral to my interest in what ultimately became my career. I just found out yesterday that they're going under, which was a bit of a casualty of COVID and this sort of rapidly changing landscape of the film production, and they just haven't been able to weather the storm. But you know, I think that one of the first jobs I ever got when I was 15 was working in a photo lab. Some of you may remember Taylor Photo in Toledo. I got a job at Taylor when I was 15 and started working in their lab, and always had a very intense interest in photography, and you know, was actually able to use the some of the dark room, that miserable little dark room that we had at Maumee Valley when I was there. But I think I always had this notion that I wanted to be a director of photography, but I always had an interest in the sort of special visual effects aspect of filmmaking, and never really knew how I was going to realize this sort of goal that I had. But I started out by, when I graduated from Maumee Valley, I joined the film program that was part of the theater arts department at University of Toledo, and met some really fantastic people there that, believe it or not, had a lot of connections to the industry. And I can trace the sort of my foot in the door moment to they had invited a guest speaker, this gentleman, Doug Craner, who was a production designer and was actually a pretty hot production designer at the time. He had just gotten a lot of acclaim for doing the movie Sleeping with the Enemy. And it was a fairly well attended event. And afterwards, I went up to him and I said, "Can I buy you lunch?" And he agreed. And we went and had lunch at Olga's Kitchen, and I bought him €1. And we sat and wound up, he said he didn't have much time, but we wound up talking for, a good hour and a half. And I think that I impressed upon him, my interest in getting into the film business, my, complete lack of knowledge on how to get in. But that I knew that if I could just get my foot in the door, that I could prove myself and sort of be worthy of, being in the industry. And after that meeting, I didn't hear from him for until about 6 weeks later, when I was mid-semester at school. And he called me up and said, "I just took a project in Chicago working for John Hughes. Would you be interested in coming and being our art department PA?" And I dropped out of school and packed everything I owned into my little Honda Civic wagon and drove to Chicago about 3 days after the phone call, and spent a year working there on this John Hughes film project called Baby's Day Out. And I met a lot of incredible people, established some really great relationships, and a lot of the crew on that show were brought in from LA because at the time Chicago didn't have a really huge film industry, but through meeting these various crew members, I established relationships, and I kept those relationships up, even though I decided after that year was over to go and finish my degree. I finished that degree as quickly as possible, and then did another radical move and drove across the country in that same little Civic wagon with everything I owned and about 2 months worth of rent, and landed in LA and landed another job as a production assistant. And from there on, I've just sort of gradually been able to always tell people what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be, and cultivate relationships. And I think it is, for those of you who are aspiring to get into the industry, it's important to let people know what you want to do, because they'll listen to you and they'll remember you if you're worth remembering, and they'll help you out. I've had a number of people who've been real mentors to me in the industry, and who have looked out for me and called me up when there were opportunities, and I've been able to sort of parlay that into a very successful career. Currently I'm just finishing up James Gunn's Suicide Squad. I'm consulting on Conjuring 3, and I'm prepping to head to the United Kingdom for the rest of the year to do the sequel for Aquaman. So, it's all worked out really well for me. I think there's been a lot of fortune, a lot of good fortune, a lot of luck. I think that you tend to make your own luck as well. And when these things happen, these lucky moments happen, you have to capitalize on them. And I think that, that's a really important lesson to learn. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of my career in a nutshell. As far as what my day looks like, it's generally, if you're going to get into this business, be prepared to work really long hours. That's all I can say. It's not easy. It's not an easy business. It's, I've been very fortunate. I've been married for 23 years. I have 4 wonderful children. I've managed to sort of have a good family life, be gone. I'm usually gone every other year. I'm usually abroad. But then I always come back to LA for post-production. And I think that, it's just, you've got to be prepared to, work hard at it and, make certain sacrifices. For me, it's work and family. I don't spend a lot of time doing things for myself. But I think I'm be happy to answer any questions, and and I'll pass to whoever's up next.
Thanks, Calvin. I am sensing a trend, which is good advice, is you might want to drop out of college if you're looking for success in film.
I did go back and finish my degree, but you'll learn a lot more on a film set than you ever will in film school. I'll tell you that, hands down.
Agreed.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Jason.
Hi, everyone. Jason Gilmore, class of 1994. I am a writer, director, and an independent filmmaker. My story is very nonlinear and and still a work in progress in a lot of ways. But I, as Stephen and Kelvin said, I was a student at Maumee Valley when I discovered that I wanted to make films. I had always been a writer since I was a little kid, and that was the only thing I knew how to do really well, that I could kind of see myself doing for the rest of my life. So then the question became, well, what are you going to write? And all through high school, I wrote short stories and plays and songs and everything. So I was just kind of jumping around trying to figure out where I fit. And I read a book right before my senior year of high school about screenwriting. And it was like a bulb went off. It was like, this is it. But I was kind of also like, I should probably direct the things I write, because I just didn't trust that anyone was gonna take what I was writing and know what to do with it. So then the next light bulb was, oh, you should probably go to film school. And this was just me talking to myself. No one was giving me advice on this, but so I ended up going to the University of Pittsburgh for film school, and almost dropped out after my 3rd year because I did an internship in New York at a company called October Films, which was at the time a really hot independent film company, and was doing coverage the whole summer, which is basically when you read scripts that have been sent into the company for production hopes, and kind of write your appraisal of what you thought of it and if it was something they should consider. And I tell people all the time, coming from Toledo, you don't know where you fit in. You don't know, okay, I'm good at this, but how good? Am I just good because no one else I know does this, or am I good because I'm really good? So what that summer did was it boosted my confidence, because I read a lot of scripts from people who had agents and were known big people, and the scripts, 98% of them were not good. Just objectively, I was like, what? I mean, even typos and all kinds of crazy stuff that I was like, I would never let a script go out like this. At 20, I was like, I would never send this out, So that all boosted my confidence to the point where I was considering leaving school, but I didn't. I went back for my senior year, mostly for my parents, but I'm glad that I did now. And then I went back home for a year to Toledo, moved back in with my parents to save money just to move to LA. And so in the summer of 99 at 22, I moved to LA. I didn't know a soul here except for my cousin, who I moved in with. And from there comes the nonlinear part of the story. So my only goal really was to, write screenplays and direct them. And there's not a straightforward path to that necessarily. And particularly internet, well, the internet existed, but pre-social media, pre-YouTube, pre being able to shoot a movie on my phone and put it out to the world. Like that hadn't quite popped off yet. And I didn't have any money really. I mean, not enough money to like go do a movie. So I spent a lot of time writing. I did have some jobs working in the industry. I worked in particular for a company that did a lot of television movies, and that was a very educational experience. I learned a lot, I grew a lot, but it was also very abusive. So when it ended, I was there for a whole year. And when it was over, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't even like movies anymore. Like, I need to find another way because this is not good. So I decided to actually do something that a lot of people advised me not to do, which was I just got a normal, regular job that had nothing to do with Hollywood because I wanted to not have to worry about how I was going to live and survive, and not have how the industry felt about me be directly correlated to how I was going to live. So so I got a regular job at like a healthcare company that I kind of fell into, and it turned out to be a great decision for me because it ended up financing my next moves, which were to start making my own short films, which ended up, and I'll give you the very short version of that. Over the next decade-ish, I did a few short films that ended up in festivals, ended up on television, ended up with me meeting much more famous people than myself who somehow knew about my work, which kind of really freaked me out. And so I kept having these situations where I was always like right on the edge of something happening. I had a meeting with ESPN Films that led me to be like 98% close to doing a 30 for 30 for them. It fell apart at the last minute over some music rights issues that were just above my head and above everyone's head. So I had a lot of very close calls of like, scripts I'd written that certain people were attached to, and oh, okay, we're gonna make it. And then the money disappears at the last minute. There's just a lot of weird things that are just like, are you kidding me? So my main thing is just in this field, and I'm really echoing what's already been said. It's not, it's tough. It's very tough. You're gonna have times, even if things are going well, that you doubt what you're doing or question why you're doing this, or especially if you work on the production end, and especially if you have chosen to go a path that is, just to create your own work. I also arrived here unbeknownst to me at a time where the industry was not particularly open to Black films, for lack of a better term. I was literally in a few very, I don't know, meetings with very like successful producers very early on when I was like 23, that they would just tell me to my face, like, we really like this script, but it's a Black drama and we don't know what to do with that. So thanks, and I'm like, you just said that to my face? Like, that's crazy, So, so I had a lot of that. And so I've kind of come through that on the other end, where now, thanks to streaming and the BLM movement and all these different things that have happened that have transpired since, it's actually turned in the opposite direction, where I'm getting people hitting me up randomly like that. I don't even know, like, hey, you got anything? I got an inroads here at Netflix. Send me what you have, and da da da. I just literally today sent off a limited series that I've been working on with the author of the book that I adapted to Sony and a few other places. So, and that literally just happened this morning. So that's why I'm still a work in progress. I haven't landed on a place where I feel like, oh, I made it. And I've been told that you never quite will. But again, I think you just have to learn what works best for you and kind of what you can deal with and what types of projects you want to be associated with. There were times where I was offered to work on things that, would have changed my trajectory financially, if nothing else. But I was like, if I can't tell my mom that I'm doing this movie, then I probably shouldn't be doing it. Or if it's just something that just doesn't interest me. And like Kelvin, I've been blessed to have a family. I've been married for 17 years now, I think. It's been going so well, I haven't even kept count. And I have 2 wonderful daughters, and I live here in Inglewood, California, a few blocks away from the big football stadium that's here now. So life is well, and I'm looking forward to things getting even better. But the main thing is just persistence, not being afraid to try new things. I have leveraged 100 different, I've switched pace a lot of different times, things that I never thought. I've become a pretty competent editor and cinematographer and producer just from trying to get my own projects made. Like, not because I even wanted to, but just like, oh, no one's here to help. Okay, I guess I'll do that too, and then doing it enough that you're able to actually find work as an editor. So now I've edited some other people's projects with a skill that I taught myself. And to echo the film school points, I love my film school. I appreciate having gone there, but there's a lot of things about how to get your movie made that you don't learn in film school. So I wouldn't tell anyone to go or not go. I think it really depends on what you want to get out of it. But even if it's a phenomenal school, and I've met people who went to USC and NYU and all the top schools, and they're in the same boat I'm in. They may have a couple more connections, but they still have to get out here and find their own lane with this. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Jason. Anant, you want to go?
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Anant Tamarisa. I graduated 2002 from MV back in the day. It's been, I don't know, it's crazy to think that I see Tyler and Parl. It feels like just a few days ago we were kind of running around the hallways, so it's good to see you guys. But I run business and legal affairs for AGC Studios, basically a fancy way of saying in-house attorney. So I touch, all transactional components to the film and television business. So whether it's intellectual property rights, so if someone like Jason writes a script, I would do the deal with Jason's agent or his lawyer to acquire the rights to that script. It's packaging, so it's attaching talent and filmmakers, and finance work, so it's finding financial partners or lenders or debt providers, anybody to come in and make independent film. A day in the life of a lawyer is dealing with a lot of problems. So it's usually, waking up to a full inbox of things that, production related. We shoot a lot in different countries, different time zones. So it's waking up to issues that may have transpired, especially due to COVID. There's always that moment where you're bracing yourself when you wake up in the morning to see if, your production is still on track, still on budget. So, and then this day of Zoom, so, it's basically Zooms all day. And I'm sure, Tyler and Parl, both working for companies, you can probably relate, and probably a lot of other people in different industries, but, it's meetings, it's emails, it's drafting contracts, it's a lot of that. And I'm currently on the Eastern time right now. So my days go super long because LA usually, entertainment hours, at least for office work, usually wraps around 7 p.m. Pacific. So, I get a little bit of a cushion in the morning, but I'm typically up very late, unfortunately. I'll keep mine short because I know, Tyler, you want to keep things moving, right?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Parl.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Parl. Tyler and I were in the same class together, so we're old. And it's nice to thank you for inviting me, I guess. So I currently work at Warner Brothers. I am a development exec. I'm a vice president of drama development there. And so what that means on a day-to-day is I pretty much help create television shows. So everything from I work with writers, I work with producers, to come up with ideas. I have either it's they bring in ideas to us, I find ideas myself, we find books, we find formats, we whatever, and we start to shape a TV show. So we talk a lot about characters and story and worlds, and we start putting together the story, and we put together a pitch, is what they call it. And Warner Brothers is not kind of vertically aligned with any one particular network, so we get to try to put together our show that we like, and we'll go and try to we'll pitch it everywhere across town to all the different networks, be it cable, streaming, basic, broadcast, whatever it is. We can kind of sell everywhere, which is exciting, because then you get to have such a range of types of TV shows that you can do, everything from your superhero shows to your character dramas to your procedurals to your whatever really great cable show, whatever it is. And then hopefully we sell it, and then we develop it. And so we go everything from, I work with the writer and the producers to have the idea kind of evolve to a script. So that's everything from, a story area, an outline, a script. And hopefully upon success, we will then go into production on the pilot script. And so then I'm involved with everything from hiring our director and casting and figuring out the location. Pre-COVID, I would go to set while we would film it and just make sure this is a huge, at the end of the day, this is a business. And so there is a huge financial kind of commitment that's been going, that's happening. So we need to just kind of make sure everything's going well. And then hopefully while it's shooting, we will, or once it's done shooting, we will work in post, and we will make the cut, and try to make the best version of whatever we have. And at the same time, I will be trying to find writers. So hopefully upon success and the show gets picked up to series, I will have worked with my producing partners, and we will have figured out who are the best writers that we think that would help understand the show and really kind of help shape it in series. And then we're off, and hopefully we get a series pickup. So that's kind of, it's funny, the world is changing, the industry is changing. It used to be a lot more kind of, there's phases of when you would do things. Now it's kind of, it feels like 365 all year round as for, what you're doing. And one day I might be giving notes on a script, and another day, just today, I was in a casting session. It's just, it varies, but it's fun and it's exciting because every day is very different. I will say very much like what Calvin said, be prepared for long hours. That is absolutely what it is. But if you enjoy it and you love it, you make it work. I guess my really quick story is I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work in television. I was always a TV kid. I knew I wanted to work in creative, but I didn't really know what that meant. I went to NYU and realized New York was more like the journalism capital. And I actually had entered as a broadcast journalism major. Quickly realized I need to get to LA. I took a very random route. I actually fell into visual effects. I did visual effects in features for a few years, and then worked my way around in a weird way. I worked in a writer's room. I worked as a showrunner's assistant. I worked at a production company, and then I ended up at Warner Brothers. And I will say it was probably the best thing that could have happened that I didn't know what I was doing, because it allowed me to have all different types of experiences and honestly kind of appreciate it. Because at the end of the day, everything that I was doing is all part of the same process. It's just now I'm understanding something from post and editorial, and I'm understanding something like being in a writer's room and understanding the demands of what a writer has to go through, and how it is to get notes from a studio or a network. Or I was working on set. I will say I did a crash course on a show for 6 months. I was on set. It was better than film school because I learned how to produce because it was real, and film school can be theoretical, and it's a whole different experience actually just doing it. I'm very grateful for that. But at the end of the day, I think what I'm grateful for is that all the different experiences has just allowed me to be better at what I do now, is because I understand all of it. So I would just say my kind of a little bit of advice to all of you who are just kind of starting out is it's okay, one, if you don't know what you want to do. Two, it's okay if you do know what you want to do, but you don't know how to get there and you're trying to try different things. Just appreciate what each opportunity is and take from it because you're learning. And know that at a certain point, you're going to get on the path you want to go, and then you're just going to keep going. So you're not going to actually have that ability to play and to experience new things because you're really kind of on a path of momentum. So, so yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Pearl. And I realized I didn't introduce myself. So I'm Tyler Boehm, class of 01 with Pearl. Also went to NYU with Pearl, and moved out here. I'm currently a producer / development executive at an independent production company. We're mostly in film. My job is very similar to Pearl's, except for we don't have as much money behind us. So we go to people like Pearl and ask for her help in making the stuff that we do. Just sold our first TV show, and do a lot of indie film. And I also wrote a terrible movie that got produced, and it's called All Wifed Out. It was the most amazing experience I've had, just to echo what everyone was saying, because I wrote it and produced it, low budget. We had to do everything ourselves. And I learned more through the experience of that, where there was really, just in it, and not a lot of support structure around me than in years and years of other experience. And I would say that's another part of film. It's a very difficult thing to get the practice that you need. And so every opportunity you have to work, like, take it, even if you don't think it's going to turn into the next blockbuster or a hit TV show. That experience is so valuable, and the connections that you make from film is extremely collaborative, and TV, and whoever you work with. One day who was the PA turns into the VFX supervisor, a couple years down the road, and those relationships can really help your career. So I would love, if anybody has, if we have any questions from people in the audience, would love to take them. Otherwise, we have some more discussion topics we could continue with.
Looks like Kimmy's got a question.
Yeah, hi, my name's Kimmy. I'm class of 2018. I kind of work, I guess, in a little bit of a different area. I work in technology, finding the intersections of art and code. So I recently found myself in a spot. I have two questions, if that's okay, one on networking and one on imposter syndrome. And so I recently landed an internship that I'm really happy with at Walt Disney Animation. And I was really excited for this experience, as I guess I would be. And recently I found out that it is online due to the coronavirus. And I was wondering if anyone had any tips on networking in such a space where you can't really go up to somebody and say, hey, can I, buy you lunch, or can we set aside a time to talk? And my next question is, if you've ever dealt with imposter syndrome, how did you find a way to get around it?
What is imposter syndrome?
I guess it's really common. In the tech industry, I guess is a term that we use, that it's like you are somewhere, but you don't believe that you've earned your spot to be there.
Oh, I do that every day. I always feel like I'm an imposter. I have no idea why people pay me the money they do, or why they want me on their projects. But obviously they see something that I don't. So I wouldn't worry about that too much.
And look,
I didn't know it had a name.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't know it had a name, but
And the older you get, the more I think it gets worse.
Oh, okay.
Look, I'll just say you're right. I mean, this industry is all about who you know, and it's all about your reputation. It's all about networking. Look, this is just a weird year. It really is. I will say for myself, my networking has gone down drastically, just because, one, I think I've been around a while, so I don't need to do it as much. But two, it's just weird. But that said, just because you can't go physically and get coffee with someone doesn't mean, I've done Zoom hangs. Like, I literally will just say, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, or hey, we'd love to get to know you, or whatever. Do you mind if we, can we do a Zoom hang? And I just kind of keep it casual. You don't need to make it stiff in any way, but it's just a way to get to know each other, right? And just know that your career is going to be long. So your relationships and your networking, think of it just like you don't have to do everything in that 1 hour. just think of it as like, this is the beginning of a relationship, right? So you meet them, you casually just hang out, you chat, you get to know each other, and then you check in again a month later, 2 months later, and this is a relationship you're going to build. And so that way it feels organic, and then hopefully, you guys will help each other out as your career goes. So don't put as much pressure on the first like meet and greet, but just know that this is just the beginning, and you'll have ample opportunity to kind of have conversations. But I would just reach out casually and not make a big deal about it. And then once things kind of go back to normal, then you can go back to your asking for lunches and your coffees and such.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll also piggyback on that and just say, if you identify someone at the company that you want to learn more about, going into that meeting, just do some light research on that person, kind of their trajectory, and just have one or two, really good questions for them. I think that'll show, that you took the time to prepare for that meeting and just, enhance your kind of like your stock, value to them. Down the line, they'll think of you, for an opportunity potentially, or you'll just make a really good impression from that meeting.
Thank you.
And just one more thought on that. I mean, it is tougher to reach out maybe right now, but I think that there's kind of a golden opportunity of something about being at home really puts people's guards down. It used to be like one thing I loved about a film festival. You'd see people outside of their normal like office and dressed in casual clothes. There's something kind of disarming about it. And I've actually found I've made personal connections, even with people I've worked with for a long time that I haven't before. So I think, if you follow Parl and Anant's advice, you might actually find that this might be a good opportunity to make a deeper connection with somebody just because of the headspace that we're all in, working from home.
Maya's got a question.
Hi, hold on, let me just lower the hand. So I was wondering, like, for any of you who didn't go to college originally for the field that you're working in, whether it's like film or movie, or if it's like TV or movies, or special effects, like how long did it take for you to like get like an actual job in the industry? Because I'm somebody who didn't really realize that they wanted to go into this film until halfway through college, and I feel like everybody's always kind of like one step ahead of me because of that. And I was just wondering like how long it was for people who didn't initially plan on going with this route to actually like get a real job in the industry and feel like they made it in a way,
Probably two different answers. One is getting the job was only a few years, I would say, certainly from Maumee Valley. But feeling as though you've made it is a completely different answer. I could argue that I'm still struggling to find that, and I'm almost 70, so I don't know. But to be serious, I mean, it felt incremental. Even now that I look at it, it was all just one small step in front of the next one to finally end up inside of in my world, it was inside of a TV station. That was a cool thing to do back in the mid 70s, because television was still actually kind of an interesting place to be. So, but to be honest, I think it probably took 10 years before I realized, actually, this is a real job. I like this. This is a cool thing. And that might be what you're talking about, the definition of feeling like I made it. So, I put a 10-year mark on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can personally speak to not having studied, film or anything entertainment related in my undergrad. I moved to LA without a job, trying to get into the music industry in 2008 when the music industry was crashing, and I just took whatever opportunity I could get. And actually, I called Tyler, and we had dinner, and he said that they were hiring for an internship, and I took it. I was there the next day, and the career just kind of blossomed from there. So I had zero experience going into my career, basically, and I think and I think the people who have went to film school will have echoed. I don't think you learn so much being on the job, So even, the leg up that you may perceive someone else has over you, I think once you get started in your career, it's basically an equalizer. You just got to get your foot at the door. And that's really the key thing.
And also I would just add, things can literally change at any moment, for good or for bad. That's one of the more interesting things about this industry is that, I mean, there's people who I know personally who, were doing certain things or not doing certain things, and then they had this one thing that happened for them and it changed their whole life literally overnight. Like I've watched it happen in real time. So that's, there's a lot of things I was really worried about in my 20s that just don't even exist anymore, like literally, like physically don't even exist anymore. So I would definitely say, just try to get in where you can, as has already been said, and you'll be fine. Just continue to work hard and be a nice person. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. People remember, no one wants to work with someone that's going to be difficult or problematic. So just, continue to work hard, be a nice person. And, if you know about things that could benefit someone else, and maybe it's not for you, or maybe it is for you, let them know about it. I've had friends that I told about different things, and they might have gotten those things, and then they remember that I told them about it, so those things, end up paying off in strange ways down the road.
I wouldn't mind interjecting that, I have this thing where I hire a lot of people, and the movies I work on, we tend to have really large visual effects departments, and and I like to be involved in all the hiring, even the production assistants and the lower level, like assistant coordinators. And when I look at a CV, I like to see that people have worked regular jobs, especially people that have worked regular jobs through high school and college, and they, you don't want to fill your CV up with that, but I think it's important to be able to show that you can hold down a job, and that you have work experience. I always have a little bit of pause when it's somebody who's just come out of college and they don't put any work experience on their CV, because I'm like, well, do they understand the dynamic? Do they understand how to work for somebody else? And that's something that I wouldn't be afraid to just get work experience however you can. I mean, ideally, if you can get an internship in something that's related to your field, that's great. Or if you can get a paying job, that's even better. But I don't know. I would just say try to not just have all academics on your CV when you're out there trying to get work. Just my thoughts.
Before we go to the next question, I just want to acknowledge Parl has a hard out at 6, and so if she has,
I'll try to come back, but I apologize.
Okay. But I just want to say thank you for coming, Parl. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
I have somebody who has a question. Cameron, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, very sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No worries.
We use mostly Microsoft Teams where I'm working, so Zoom is still a learning experience. Anyhow, sorry, it's really awesome to actually see a lot of you again. It's I was in the Winterim 2011 to LA, so it's really awesome to see everybody again. But I guess I'm a little bit older. Presently, I'm in between jobs, but I've been working part-time for a while with the city of Pittsburgh in their office, which handles municipal film contracts. And I've been, after a sort of working 1.5 years at a law firm, I'm trying to sort of break back into that industry. And about 9 months to a year ago, I applied to join the local union, IATSE 489, but unfortunately the books are closed everywhere. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, in your experience, is it, at this point, I'm kind of trying to look for any door to get my foot into, but a sort of longer term position with a union. Do you see that as more of a barrier to sort of eventually moving out to LA, et cetera, as opposed to kind of being stuck in one geographic location or sort of otherwise?
I don't know. My feeling is that getting into unions is pretty tough. But if you want to work in the business, you got to go where the work is. You don't have to come to LA. You can go to Atlanta. You can go to New York. There's some film production in Philadelphia. But the union thing is always tricky, because it's like, they want you get on a show that isn't union and then they unionize it. But I've had a couple of people that I've hired that did not want to do visual effects anymore and wanted to go into editorial. And I know that one of those gentlemen just recently got into the editorial union and is doing quite well now. But it's a tricky business, the union thing. I was in the art directors union for about 11 years, and I got in at a very fortunate time. I was working for a company that was a union company, and I got sponsored. But yeah, the union jobs are that's a tough thing. It's hard to come by.
I also think that if you just start with like trying to find a job, like I'm not sure exactly what career you're pursuing, but I mean I think Kelvin has a really good idea of going to where the work is. But like you may have to start off as a PA, maybe it's on a non-union show, and then you're going to meet people who are working and they're going to pull you along into the next project that they work on. I think that like maybe just going to try to join a union is like not maybe the best way in. It's like Kelvin said, finding a job, and it might not be the thing that you want. I think that so many of us have started with that, and you got to work towards your goal, and keep your goal in mind. But a lot of times it's even a thing where you're in one job and you have to start doing the next job that you want while you're still working the job that you're in. But I think the important thing is getting somewhere and getting some kind of job in film, and you'll be able to kind of get a toehold and start building towards what you want to do from that. Also, unfortunately, Jason will have to leave at 6. I'm able to stay around a little longer. People have more questions. We want to continue the conversation.
And if anyone has any questions for me, I'm reachable. You can reach out to Wheezy or whomever, and I'm not hard to find. So,
Likewise for me too. Easy to find.
I have time. I'll hang around.
Yeah, I'm good till 6:30. Tyler.
Great, thank you. We have any other questions?
One last question.
Oh, great.
Hi, I'm Fareed. I just graduated from NYU last year, which was a tough experience in the pandemic. But I would like to be a writer. I'm like making a go of it right now, as much as you can. But I just have kind of like a general question for you guys. What's something that you wish someone could have told you that you've learned since, when you were kind of like our age, just in college or just coming out of college or even just out of high school, that you've learned over the years? What's something you wish someone had told you? And thank you for doing this, by the way.
That's a great question. It's one I struggle with because I don't know if younger me would have listened. So I think that's the problem. But I would definitely tell myself or a younger person just to be patient and be patient with yourself. I like a lot of people moved here thinking, oh, it's gonna be in a few years, and then I'll be like on top of the world or whatever. And that didn't happen. But I'm looking back now, glad that it didn't happen, because that would have been a mess. So I've matured in a lot of ways, creatively, personally. There's a lot of things that I was around for that I wouldn't have been around for had things happen the way that I wanted them to happen initially. So just to be patient with yourself, be patient with the process, and really, especially as a filmmaker, like, fall in love with the process, because there's so much about this that's always out of your control. And that's at every stage and every level. There's been times I've had to read my own scripts just to remind myself, like, oh, you are good at this. I don't care what anyone says, you know? So it's like, just really the more you can fall in love with the process of creating and, you know, control the controllables, but there's always going to be parts of it that are just irrational and just make no sense, but they happened. And so you have to move on. So that would be my biggest advice to myself as a younger person, or any younger person, to just, you know, really find the love in what you do. Because ironically, as you get closer to having any kind of success with it, the underbelly of it appears, and it can, you know, lead to you being jaded, or just not looking at it with the freshness that you may have had when you knew less. So I would definitely say, yeah, just really focus on what you can do, and try to get better at it every day. And I really believe the rest will take care of itself.
What he said.
I would say, you know, I wish someone told me to trust myself and trust my instincts when it came to making decisions and following, you know, a career path. I didn't have, you know, there wasn't a path there for me. I had to kind of figure it out in certain ways. And, you know, at times you doubt yourself, or, you know, you feel really confident about something, and you may rely too much on someone else to validate, you know, you're going in one direction versus the other. So I would just say, you know, if trust yourself, if you feel, you know, strongly about something, listen to it, pursue it, and, you know, it'll work out, you know, very confident it'll work out. And also be used to feeling uncomfortable. So when you get thrown into a lot of new situations, you're going to feel uncomfortable. It's probably imposter syndrome, if that's what it's called, or maybe related to that. But, you know, you'll work it out, and you'll learn from it. And the next time it comes up, you know, you'll be that much better.
I sort of have a twofold response. First is, you know, especially as a writer, to write and pursue the things that you're most passionate about, and not what you think will sell. And that, you know, your goal should not be to be successful or to make the sale, though of course those things are important too. But I think that those things will come about when you write the thing that you love the most, that you're most passionate about, that you know most intimately, that feel most personal to you. That's something I think I set out trying to sell things that were emulating what was successful at the time, instead of maybe doing things that were truest to my own interest. And the other thing, as a writer or in film or TV, there's an incredible amount of rejection and an incredible amount of time when things fall apart. And just holding on to your passion for what you want to do in the face of that, which can be difficult, is really important. And just know that that you know, if you keep at it, you will find a way. And you know, successful young people in Hollywood have been working for at least 10 years. It's not easy, and so you've got to stick with it.
The director, James Gunn, that I've been working with the last 2 years, has a favorite saying, which is obstacles are opportunities. And I don't know exactly what that means, but he lives by that motto.
Any last questions?
I have actually one for Anant, if I may.
Absolutely, sure.
So I noticed you went to law school at the University of Toledo. And my understanding of briefly dabbled with becoming an attorney, but was ultimately turned off by sort of the extreme elitism of basically my LSAT score was not good enough to get me into those top 14 schools. And so as somebody who broke through from the University of Toledo, like, I guess, is that something you've had to deal with like extensively?
So my path was a little bit different. I moved to LA after college. I worked in the entertainment industry for almost 4 years and then went back to law school. So I had already established connections and had working experience so that when I came back, I ended up coming back to Toledo for law school. When I finished, I took the California bar, and 2 weeks later, I had an old colleague call me up and say, hey, we have a spot for you if you want to join. So there's some luck in there, but I think it was earned luck in the sense that I did some good work for them prior to law school. But in terms of the elitism, yeah, I mean it's there for sure. I do deals with big talent attorneys who all probably went to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, the top schools. And that may be like this quote unquote pedigree that it takes to get into a talent firm, if that's what you want to do. Not to be said that it can't be done. But I think it's really about building the network, at some point. So even if you did go to University of Toledo, for example, and then you move to LA, yeah, you're not going to get most likely into the top firms in LA, but you can likely get a job, and it may not be the exact job that you want, but it's about getting in. And once you get in, you'll build the network, you'll build the connections. If you're a hard worker, if you're smart, you just naturally move up. There's plenty of lawyers I do deals with who went to top schools who are terrible lawyers. They're not good. They're notoriously bad. So the school itself is not going to define you as a practitioner. It just maybe could set your pedigree or set your initial job path is probably the best way to say it. But I wouldn't look at it as a detriment or something to hold you back.
I would say generally we work with people with an incredible variety of backgrounds, and none of it matters. Like once you're here and you're doing the work, like you're in. Maybe it's hard. Maybe going to a big firm is difficult at first, but like people from studio heads to directors to producers, like you can have all different kinds of backgrounds and find a way to be successful here if you're doing good work.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of producers who are lawyers. There are a lot of agents who are lawyers just by virtue of their education. So I mean, it could be a springboard into a different career path, not necessarily just practicing law.
For what it's worth, I often tell people that my experience at Maumee Valley prepared me for life way more than my college experience did. I learned a lot more at Maumee Valley, and it shaped me as who I am way more than going to University of Toledo. And I don't think beyond the first few years of my career, I don't think anybody cares where I went to school. Certainly not at this point.
Yeah, I 100% echo that.
Anyone else? Well, maybe Kelvin's comment, especially, I think maybe as we wrap up, makes me think that this is a good time to talk about that. All of us here today, I think, owe a big part of where we are in our careers to our experiences in Maumee Valley, and just so grateful for this, for my experiences there, and for the community that I found, and to help ensure that our current students have these same opportunities. It's essential that we continue to support MV through giving. So Chris is going to drop a link in the chat. And Maumee Valley and the Alumni Council appreciate any donation you can make, no matter the size, and your support helps keep our community strong. So we appreciate that. And other than that, does anybody have any last words?
I think there's a question.
I did have a question.
Oh,
there you
sorry.
Go. Thank you, Weezy.
There you go, Hank.
Yeah, a simple question, but are these independent, based on the size of the production, are they opened up as LLCs? Are they opened up as their own company underneath the corporation? How are they managed, like in that sense?
You're talking about independent film, like producing an independent film?
Well, I'm wondering, I don't know if it's based on size of the production, but I'm not sure if like smaller films or TV shows are opened up under LLCs, or if that's reserved for like large motion pictures.
So the LLC basically is formed on a project by project basis. It's basically to shield any liability from the parent companies. So if that LLC that's formed for the show takes a loan or takes money from somebody and then ends up going bankrupt, the debtor can go only after the creditor will only go after that debtor. So it's basically just a legal structure. It has nothing to do with the size of the project or the budget.
Yeah,
and you may not want to go through all those loopholes or go through all that process if your budget's so low it doesn't really merit the fees associated with it. But for anything of any decent size, you're going to want to try to set it up properly.
Yeah, for what it's worth, even the $250 million blockbusters are all set up that way.
Thank you.
Sure.
Bennett, did you have a question? Maybe not.
Well, speaking of Bennett, I'd like to say hi, Bennett. Can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay. Any last questions? Anybody want to say something in closing?
She's unmuted.
Oh, she's unmuted. Okay.
Oh.
Huh?
She's gone.
Well, thank you everyone so much for coming. Thank you especially to our panelists and Anant and Kelvin. Really appreciate your time. Really enjoy this conversation. Hoping that it continues. If you have interest, we're going to continue doing these career panels in other fields. The Alumni Council is putting them on maybe every 2 months. We also have DEI panels that we're running. That Grace, who's here, is helping to coordinate. And hope you join us for those two. We had a really great one last month with really meaningful, important conversation. So we hope to keep seeing you around. Cool. And if you have other questions to follow up on, please feel free to reach out to any of us. We'd love to keep talking to you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Tyler.
I feel bad. I think I made Bennett hang up.
She had a flashback. Hey, thanks.
I wanted to say to her, look, I didn't turn out so bad, did I?
Thank you all so much for sharing. Really grateful.
Thank you for taking time out and being there.
Right on, guys. It was a
take care.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.